Hello everybody and welcome back to the FPL Phillips YouTube channel for the 23-24 season, where we're going to be wrapping up all the FPL related stuff that I've been considering into one big video for you all. Give you maybe some food for thought. I imagine all you guys have probably made your drafts right now and are sitting, just maybe tweaking one thing a day. Well, I'm going to be running through basically every single position in the template team right now, all the major price brackets that people are telling you should consider, having a look at the different options that I'm personally taking a look at inside of those price brackets, and then maybe giving you guys some ideas as to which options are the best to go for based on data, based on my interpretation that maybe can influence you as well, and also give you some decisions to make in your own mind. So yeah, we're going to kick things off with the goalkeepers, as we always do with these FPL draft videos, and there isn't really one standout pick when it comes to the goalkeeping slots. So I've just gone with a 4.5 to 5 million keeper, which is going to be the most popular bracket. And then also as the goalkeeper, second keeper, it's majoritarily going to be Areola at the 4.0 mark, but I've also put 4.0 to 4.5 because there is those small proportion of people who might be going with the two 4.5 goalkeepers and choosing to rotate them, where there could be a few decent options. It is a less popular strategy as the years go by, because often we've seen that people go with these two 4.5s and the one on the bench ends up scoring more than the one playing, and there's nothing really more frustrating than that. So I think most managers nowadays just choose to bite the bullet, go with the one keeper, go with the 4.0 who is a guaranteed starter or might be. You basically pick the one that is the most likely to get the most minutes. This year, it looks like Areola is going to be that one. But we'll take a look at the other goalkeeping options now, and I've compared these guys using their fixture ranking, defensive fixture difficulty ranking taken from Fantasy Football Fix. We've then got their expected FPL point score per 90 from last year, and then also their predicted points total over the first 3 game weeks, and that is courtesy of drafthound.com. The links to these tools will be down below in the description if you would like to check them out for yourselves. This is the way I would compare it if I was just doing my own research, and this is the kind of table I've put together and the different goalkeeping options that I will be considering. Ramsdale and Martinez are the two 5.0s that I look most likely to go for. I'd say Ramsdale out of the two. I mean, look at that predicted points total, 10.6, blows all the other competitors in this list out of the water, really. They do have some very nice fixtures, Arsenal, and that is what is bumping up that total, especially within the first 3, which is why it is so high. Even though they're 7th for fixture difficulty over the first 6, they have a high chance of getting clean sheets in those first 3 fixtures in particular. I'd go with him over Martinez personally. As mentioned, I just don't think that I would go for an outfield Arsenal defender, and I would like some cover there. I think Gabriel is a great option, don't get me wrong. Same with Zinchenko, really. Ben White, I think, is 0.5 too much and might face some competition from Timber. But Ramsdale in goal looks a really solid one. It allows you to go with a defence of Trent, Estepinian and Shaw, for example. Pick 3 more attacking defenders, you would say, and just have that Arsenal cover sat with your goalkeeper, even if it means spending that extra 0.5 million than other managers are choosing to do so. Speaking of that 0.5 million, we'll now touch on the 4.5 million keepers. As you can see, I've gone for quite a lot of them, perhaps some more less popular ones, some more differential options in this list as well. Pickford, I've then gone for the Brighton keepers, who I think won't be too popular due to the fact that, as mentioned, Estepinian, outfield and defence, looks very good. We've then got Flecken of Brentford, who I think is going to be a very popular option if Raya leaves, which is looking increasingly likely. He's a new signing, so we don't have any data for him from last season, but Brentford are 6th in the fixture rankings, and when we look at Raya's underlying data from last season, I don't know too much about Flecken, so it's hard to compare, whether outfield passes is playing into some of the bonus points and things like that. Small differences, really, but Raya's underlying data did look very good. I think if Flecken can replicate that, Brentford have a really solid defence, and he'll be a great goalkeeper option at 4.5 million. Definitely going with him over the likes of Leno, Fabianski maybe, although he does look like he could be someone who you could pick with Areola to have that guaranteed goalkeeping starter. I've seen that FPL Guns, the guy who finished 1st in the world last year, has got both West Ham keepers in his side. So, if you're going by anything like that, he's got a track record of doing quite well at FPL. He's owning the 2 West Ham goalkeepers in his current draft that I saw anyway. We've then got Sam Johnston of Crystal Palace and Muric of Burnley, so 2 less popular goalkeepers there with worse ranked fixtures and also a lower predicted points total, but they do just about creep it into my top 10 full considerations just because Other than those two 5.0 million keepers, all the other ones I'm considering are 4.5 million or even below if you include Areola in those price brackets. So yeah, out of these keepers, I think Ramsdale's the most likely for me to go for, or a 4.5 million. With pre-season, that's what's needed to deduce whether we can go for someone like a Flecken or whether it's more important to pick someone like Pickford. If Flecken's minutes aren't going to be guaranteed, but you'll speak to Brentford fans on that. I'm sure it will become apparent as we get nearer the game week 1 deadline. But yeah, that's going to be it for the goalkeepers, and we'll move into having a look at the defence. Now, when it comes to the defence, there really are three kind of options that are going to be nailed in everyone's draft, and three that I'm not particularly going to touch on with too much detail. And those are going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold at 8 million, Estupiñán at 5 million, and then kind of the 4.0 million defender slot. I don't think too many people are going to be having 5 playing defenders, or there will be a 5th playing defender, just a 4.0 million option. So whichever one of those looks the best, whether it be Bell from Luton, who you can see in here, I've put it in as a kind of placeholder, whether it be Bayer of Burnley, Baldock at Sheffield United. I think that kind of decision is just best left until pre-season is kind of done, concluded, and we have all the information available to us. I mean, a couple of days before game week 1, the deadline even. Just make the decision then, informed on all the great creators and people like that who are reporting on pre-season, and then you can make the best decision for your bench. It's not going to make too much of a difference if they're sat at 2nd or 3rd on the bench every single week. I've just put Bell in for now. Trent and Estupiñán, likewise, not going to touch on them too much. I think Trent and Estupiñán, out of the two, Estupiñán is the more debatable, maybe just because there are quite a lot of good defensive options that you can go for in that 5 million to 5.5 million bracket. And that's what we're going to touch on for the Defender 3 pick, and then we'll also take a look at some 4.5 million defenders as well. These are kind of interchangeable, but I think the back 3 is going to be the most popular this year, and that means like a 5.0 to 5.5 defender alongside Estupiñán will be very common inside these back 3s of Trent, Estupiñán. And then one of these 4, I think, is going to be a rather popular choice. Shaw, Stones, Gabriel, and then Pedro Porro are the 4 that I've gone for. Porro one going a little bit more under the radar, but I did want to include him in this comparison for some perspective and for some comparison with other defenders who are at a similar price point to him, so that I could maybe even try and sell him to myself as an option, sell him to you as an option, because he does look rather impressive when we take a look at this data. And via Fantasy Football Flicks, we can see in terms of expected FPL points per 90, Pedro Porro and John Stones are tied. 5.13 expected FPL points per 90 per piece. Luke Shaw coming in 2nd, and then Gabriel the worst of the bunch. But when we look at attacking returns and specifically expected goals, Pedro Porro is ahead by quite a margin. Same with assists really, he's 0.06 above Luke Shaw, who is a defender who's quite well renowned for having a good expected assist total. Stones and Gabriel as more central defenders. I know you can't really class Stones as that now in the new Man City system, but they have less expected assists just because of that. Assist threat doesn't particularly come into their consideration. They have that higher expected goals, as you can see. Gabriel's mainly coming from set pieces, kind of likewise you'd have to say with Stones, even in this new system that Pep is deploying. In terms of fixture difficulty, over the first couple of games, with Manchester City having the strongest of the bunch, they're ranked 2nd for defensive fixture difficulty. Then Arsenal down in 7th, Spurs are in 9th, and Manchester United the worst fixture splits of the bunch over the first 6 in 12th position. That's when we rank by defensive fixture difficulty only, so it is worth considering that the order may be slightly different when we look at attacking potential and attacking fixture difficulty. Maybe Manchester United might be a little bit stronger, but I've just taken all that from the fixture analyzer over at Fantasy Football Fix as noted. In terms of expected clean sheets, we've actually seen Manchester City be the highest of expected clean sheets when John Stones has been on the pitch, so 0.50. I know Man City didn't seem to get to many of those clean sheets actually becoming a reality last year, but it is good to see that the defensive data, as we kind of know and would anticipate, is rather strong. They just slipped those little goals which made everyone rage at Ederson for the majority of last season, it felt like. We've then got the other defenders more close together. Arsenal 0.37, Porro and Shaw very hard to split, 0.30 and 0.31 apiece for them. And in terms of expected points over the next 3, so the first 3 game weeks of the season, it is John Stones who comes in top ranked by DraftHound, 13.1 for him, with Gabriel just behind, and then Shaw and Pedro Porro dropping down the order a little bit there. So I think Porro's will probably be mostly to do with recent data, and he's not been a statistically good FPL asset so far in his time in the Premier League. But I think it could really be a good breakthrough season for him. Whether that means starting with him from the get-go, of course, is a different question in itself of how much of a daredevil and a risk-taker you want to be. But Luke Shaw, I think, is one we can say is proven. I know he had some stints at centre-back last season, but he's going to be back at left-back for the time being, at least until maybe one of Martinez and Varane gets injured this season. With Varane, it seems like it might be quite quickly incoming, but they do have Lindelof as backup as well, and he did very well when he was called upon. So hopefully Luke Shaw can stay at left-back where he has got that added attacking threat, but he's great for bonus points no matter where he's playing. He even got some great hauls at centre-back just due to that kind of bonus points additives he can get from getting all these passes in per 90 and whatnot. So Luke Shaw, I think, offers a great option. Stones may be the pick of the bunch and looks like the standout favourite here. Shaw and Gabriel very neck and neck. Arsenal perhaps pivot with the better fixtures, and then Pedro Porro for any risk takers out there. But we're going to have a look at some 4.5 million defenders. Now, I'm not going to dive quite as deep into the statistics behind these guys, but here are some of the more popular options that you could consider going for if you're looking for that slot. Matty Cash, Tarkowski, Botman, Henry, Guehi, and Admandozic. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but that's my best attempt of Sheffield United are the ones that I'm considering here in this price slot if I do decide to go for it. Cash, I think if you asked me a year ago or 2 years ago whether Cash at 4.5 million would be good value, then I'd have bit your arm off and said absolutely he will be. But Emery's come in. It looks like Moreno at left back, if he's going to be fit, or whoever is deployed in that left back slot, whether it be Luca Dean, looks like the more attacking threat. Cash's attacking threat is not as high as it used to be, but still could be a really great option. Aston Villa looked fantastic last season under Emery. I'm assuming that they will only get even better. Hopefully for them, they can start putting together some results despite being in Europe, which is going to take a toll on what isn't the most deep squad. We've then got Everton. I know the team that barely stayed in the Premier League last season, choosing to go with a defender from that team. But Tarkowski is a kind of proven FPL asset. You could consider him at that 4.5 million slot for your side. Botman, I think the only thing that lets him down is that complete lack of attacking threat, really. And also the fixtures don't look too good for Newcastle, which is what does tempt me to go for someone a little bit more attacking and from arguably a better defensive side at points last season in Brentford's Rico Henry. 4.5 million seems a very fair price for him. Again, he looks very attacking at times, and to be honest, he'd probably be my pick of the bunch. Guehi, another centre-back option who does have more attacking threat than maybe Botman in this list, but Palace haven't been the strongest defence. I think 4.5 million, you could probably find better value in a few of the other picks in here. Admandozic is probably a name that a few of you don't recognise. I mean, I didn't recognise him when Sheffield United came up into the Premier League, but we're going to have a little bit of a delve into him now. Looking at his heat map, we can see where Sheffield United are in the fixture difficulty rankings. They're 13th for these first 6 fixtures that they've got. They have some nice games in Game Week 2 and Game Week 4 against Forest and Everton, and that is one thing to consider when you're looking at someone like a 4.5 million defender slot. You've already got those 3 defenders in your side, so Trent, Estupiñán and Shaw. Are you going to even want to bench those? So whoever you've got, whether it be Shaw, Stones rather, out of those 5 to 5.5 million, there could be a potential for you wanting to bench them if they have a particularly tricky fixture, say they're facing off against Man City in Game Week 2, then you're going to want to look at your 4.5 million defenders a little bit more in isolation around those game weeks. So Admandozic might be facing Forest, and whilst I might think Botman is a better option, he might be facing off against Arsenal in that game week. And so when we look at that, we almost want to look and kind of ignore the fixtures where we're certain we're not going to be playing these 4.5s anyway. So you've got Trent, Estupiñán and Shaw, you want to play them all in game week 3, then it's pretty irrelevant that Admandozic is playing Manchester City in that week because he's going to be on my bench anyway unless something weird happens like him getting injured. But yeah, he's going to be very low owned. He's got some great goals per 90 statistics and assists per 90 statistics from the Championship. Whether that can translate up to the Premier League, we're going to see a pretty severe drop-off, you'd imagine, from a team going from, the top of the table down to probably fighting for relegation. No offence to Sheffield United, but they'll be hoping to try and survive. But there's going to be a lot less attacking threat there. Whether he'll be a compelling option, maybe some Sheffield United fans are watching and can tell me in the comments. But as 4.5 million defenders go, he could definitely be one to watch come the start of the campaign. And with that, now we can move into midfield, where there are 2 slots that I think we don't really need to discuss too much. That's going to be Bukayo Saka and then Bryan Mbeumo, both penalty takers for their respective sides. I think Saka came in too cheap at 8.5 million. The same price as Odegaard on penalties. You'd argue, the same kind of minutes are going to get, but Saka with that added attacking threat. I'm aware how well Odegaard did last year, and don't get me wrong, I'm not writing him off or saying he's a bad option, but I think Saka is one you will see in the majority of drafts from traditionally high-ranking managers. And the same goes for Bryan Mbeumo, and we can see why this is the case. I know people said stuff with Pedro Neto last year, comparing him, saying he's going to be this year's version of Neto, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hype around him, but on paper, Mbeumo offers a fantastic pick. With no Tony last year, we compare the data to when Tony was on the pitch. There was a smaller sample size being given, it's around 400 to 500 minutes, but there's still a significant gulf. You can see a difference of 0.5 expected goals per 90 between when Tony wasn't on the field versus when Tony was. So whether that's going to include some penalties, stuff like that, I'm not entirely sure. But that still means the fact that we've got a pretty significant gulf. We see that with shots on target, we see that with shots in the box, we see it with expected assists and attempted assists as well. The only metric where he performs better with Tony on the pitch is when the big chance is created. So that's because Mbeumo turns more provider when Tony is on the field, and that's who he's created those big chances for when Ivan has been on the pitch. But with him suspended for however many months it is going to be, we've got Mbeumo for the first portion of the season with those penalties, with this kind of data set you can see on the left-hand side, and I think that's why he's going to be in the majority of teams come game week 1. So that's just my thinking with regards to that. With midfielder 1 that you can see on the left, that's basically just going to be a kind of premium / Salah fit here. I think you are still going to see quite a lot of teams with Salah, although it is looking more popular to not go with him, and that is going to be the first position that we compare and kind of have a look at. Now Salah, while he does come in at a very hefty price tag, there's reason why he is at that price. The predicted points totals for him from game week 1 to 3, as you can see in that right-hand column, 18.1, quite far ahead of second place, more than 4 predicted points ahead of Marcus Rashford at 14.1. When you do consider the 3.5 million price difference, getting you 4 extra points, is it going to be worth it? Can you use that value elsewhere in your side to earn those points back and gain more? You would argue yes, but they're obviously only a prediction. In terms of expected FPL points per 90 last season, Salah is better, but we have a look at these other slightly cheaper midfield options. We can see Marcus Rashford, Martinelli ranking highly as well, Phil Foden down at the bottom, who I think you are going to see in quite a lot of drafts, especially as with Manchester City's fixture ranking, for attacking fixture difficulty, they come in first. And Phil Foden with De Bruyne looking to still have that injury come the start of the season, his minutes should be a little more assured. Because we never know what happens with Pep Roulette. He could well miss out, we don't know. There's been times where weird stuff happens with Pep. That's going to continue this season. But I'd reckon that Foden is going to be a pretty nice option come game week 1. And I do really like the look of him. Out of those kind of 7.5 midfielders, I think him and Maddison are going to be the 2 strongest options. It's hard to kind of assess Maddison's data. He was playing in a completely different side last year. It's yet to tell whether Kane's even going to still be at that club. It looks like Spurs are rejecting every single offer that's coming in from likes of Bayern Munich. But Maddison, I think, should be providing for Heung-min Son, whoever it is, who also makes it into this table. And I think Richarlison, even moving up front, could present an option if Kane does decide to leave. So Spurs is a little bit all over the place at the moment. We've also got those other Arsenal options, who you can see in here. They rank highly. We've got Odegaard, 14.1 predicted points from game week 1 to 3. Those fixtures are especially nice for Arsenal in that period. So whilst over the first 6, they might rank 5th in terms of fixture difficulty, over the first 3, they do rank rather highly. And so you could go for someone like an Odegaard or a Martinelli for those first 3 fixtures. Triple up on Arsenal potentially if you include one other asset alongside Saka. And then you've got those 3 players in for those 3 fixtures. You can have some time, a couple of game weeks, to take a look at which teams are hitting it off, see whether Pochettino can get Chelsea going, for example, maybe move across to someone like a Raheem Sterling and other cheaper midfielders from other sides that are less proven in the Premier League and in FPL, you would argue. So that's my kind of thoughts on the premium midfielder. I think between Rashford and Fernandes, it's going to be equally tight. Their second for fixture difficulty in terms of the attacking metrics. 0.5 million difference. You're getting penalties with Fernandes, but Rashford, A lot of it's going to depend. Which number 9 are Manchester United going to bring in? Are they even going to bring in a number 9? If they haven't come the start of the season, then it'd be tough to argue going against Marcus Rashford, playing up front as Manchester United's primary source of goals. So that is the kind of 2 cents that I'm giving you on my midfielder 1 slot, so from 8 million up to 12.5 million. Of course, we did include a few 7.5s in there actually, so that's waffle from me. But midfielder 4 and midfielder 5, whether you're going to have a 4-man midfield or a 5-man midfield, I think you could have a 4.5 million midfielder, but I think the majority will now have that kind of 5-man midfield with the 3 at the back, or maybe even a 4-5-1 if you're feeling very brave, which is kind of my current draft. But we're going to be looking at more than just one 6.5 around that price tag midfielder is what I'm getting at, not just Bryan Mbeumo. And so we're going to have a similar look, a similar comparison between midfielders at this price tag. Now, one thing I should stress out straight away is that Jacob Ramsey is now injured. I've included his data anyway, just because I like to have a look and kind of use that comparison of that data. There wasn't any other midfielder around this price who I was that particularly interested in. But we've got some very familiar names for those of you who played FPL. Mitoma last season did particularly well, and I think is going to be the most popular of the options in this list, which is kind of why I've chosen to sort it, not by price tag. We've got Bowen and Sterling in there at 7 million as well. Couldn't quite include Mudryk in this, and perhaps not one that I'm going to be prepared to go for, given from what we've seen from him in the Premier League so far. But Chelsea do rank 3rd for fixture difficulty, and Sterling is actually in my current draft right now. He is someone who's been proven to perform well in FPL terms. It is just a gamble. As kind of mentioned when I talked about the Arsenal midfielders, going with someone more proven and in a team more proven, really, and then moving across to Sterling if Chelsea do well, is something that is a more safe play than perhaps gambling on Sterling from the start. And that's kind of reflected in his predicted points from game weeks 1 to 3. They're not as high as the likes of Jared Bowen even, at 11.2, Mitoma at 11.1. So we have got some better looking options from this bunch if you're going by what a draft ham thinks. There are a few statistics that are a little bit up in the air. And Ciso, for example, his expected minutes are taken into account, so only 5.6 predicted points for him. He's going to be competing, you'd say, with João Pedro maybe in that slot behind the striker. And we've got Pascal Gross as well as Solly March, so kind of including all the Brighton assets in there. Of those, it looks like it's going to be Enciso, who has the highest expected FPL per 90, followed by March, followed by Mitoma, whose form kind of did fall off towards the tail end of the season. Gibbs White is another one that I really do like. I do wish that Nottingham Forest had slightly better fixtures, and I'd be very tempted to squeeze him into my draft. Only 8.6 predicted points for him, with Forest ranking 17th for attacking fixture difficulty. And then finally, we've also got Eze in there, who had a very good end to last season. 8th for Crystal Palace in terms of attacking fixture difficulty, and yeah, a very good expected FPL points per 90 total for him. He's very much a master of all trades, maybe a master of all trades, I should say a jack of all trades, a master of none. But he's not really that either. He does very well at all of them, and maybe he's not the highest of the bunch, but you're kind of looking for green across the board when we look at these tables, and so that's why Eze is definitely one that I'd be considering with some, having towards the top of my shortlist, and that is why he is up there. So in terms of that, what do I think the most popular midfield is going to be? It's probably going to be the likes of Rashford, Saka, and Mbeumo, who are in there already, Mitoma, and then one other. But I think whether that's Bruno Fernandes, Son, Maddison, Foden, someone like that, I think you're going to have a very good midfield on your hands, and there's not too many dilemmas in midfield. There's a lot more stress with finding people to pick when you look towards the forwards. And that's what we're going to get into now. Having a look at up front, where we're going to obviously see Erling Haaland as the first pick, and the only real nailed pick in this side, 14 million. But yeah, I think most people would have picked him at 15 or 15.5 million in their sides. We've then got those 2 forward slots, so forward 2 and forward 3, where I think the majority are going to have a 4.5 million fodder as that third forward. So whether that's Archer, Balogun of Arsenal, if he gets a move to another Premier League club, could present an option as well. But forward 2, that kind of second striker, is the one where there is the most debate, and that's what we're going to have a look at right now. And so when we take a look at the forward options that are looking popular at the moment, it really just kind of come down to these 3 that I've found. There are other options. Someone like a Ferguson could present a pick. Someone like Calvert-Lewin, even if he manages to stay fit through pre-season, which I'm not banking on, to be honest. That's why I've chosen to kind of not put too much thought into choosing Calvert-Lewin until we can kind of see that whatever's going on at Everton under Sean Dyche is actually not breaking him in half before the season starts. But Gakpo, Jesus and Nkunku are the ones in this team. I've compared him with the two on the left with Nkunku's data from the Bundesliga, but of course, kind of like with Kai Havertz and Werner, when they came over from the Bundesliga, we're probably going to see some kind of Bundesliga tax or whatever you want to call it, some kind of drop-off in his data when he does enter a league that's going to be more difficult for him. But I do still really rate him highly as a player, and I don't think the data will have too much of a drop-off. It's not going to be Erling Haaland, where he comes in and basically just tears it up. He's not going to be that kind of player, and he won't be playing as an out-and-out striker from what I've been reading. I think he may be more in that kind of number 10, almost maybe a false 9 shadow striker role. But yeah, I think his data looks really good, whether you take a gamble on him from the get-go, as I kind of mentioned with Sterling and Mudryk. If you look to go for those guys, maybe jumping on around game week 3, once we've had 1 or 2 weeks to assess how Pochettino is doing with that Chelsea side, looks like the most sensible and probably strong option that you can do. If you can go for someone like a Jesus for those first 2 weeks and then have the option to open up and use that transfer in that week, then game week 3, then that seems to be the most demanding pick that is going to basically be what most people do and what you're going to see in the majority of FPL YouTube drafts. So we've got Jesus and comparing him with Gakpo, who's going to have his minutes less nailed. He's got Diaz for competition off the left if he's going to play. They've got Nunes through the middle as well. You've got Diogo Jota. So there's many players in that attacking 3 for Liverpool now. Whether Gakpo is going to be the most nailed and get the most minutes, I think you can only really say with certainty that Mo Salah is the one assured 4 minutes in that side. And even then, we see an expected goals data lower than Jesus's. He is better for attacking assists, but when we look at the predicted points totals, it is Jesus who blows the other two out of the water. 14.5 over the first 3 game weeks, where he does have the nicest fixtures as well, with Forest, Palace and Fulham being those 3 games. I think he does just look the best 8 million forward. Watkins could be another one that you could go for, but isn't one that's tempted me enough to put him kind of into this comparison. So I think that is what you're going to see with the majority of front lines. I think it's going to be Erling Haaland. I think it's then going to be Gabriel Jesus, and then a 4.5 million forward, and using the other funds used by saving that and going for the 4.5 as bench fodder elsewhere in the team. So on the bench, you'll have that 4.5 million fodder, along with Bell or whichever 4.0 defender it ends up being, plus then one option who can come in, whether that's a 4.5 million defender, whether that's maybe even a cheaper midfield option such as Enciso. Maybe that's the way that some managers choose to go. But yeah, this is what the FPL template is looking like. I hope some of those comparisons have potentially tickled your brain a little bit, or maybe made you consider some different options who maybe hadn't been on your radar, or that you hadn't been impressed by in certain ways. Maybe you've seen some data that's caught your eye and you're going to look a bit deeper into considering different options and keeping an eye on them throughout pre-season. If you have enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.